Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John's Reports for the 20th. Well, we had some interesting events take place yesterday. The dip was a result of market reaction to the um, Ukrainians striking into Russia using U.S. Longer range missiles. This throws in a dynamic that is going to create a lot of uncertainty because obviously you just escalated the world conflict dramatically right before a transition to a new administration. There's going to be a lot of debate as to what the point of that change was. Obviously, Ukraine is losing dramatically, and they needed to do something. But this escalates things given the change in the doctrine from Russia on use of nuclear weapons, and/or the likelihood is that they'll use alternative methods, which would be things like supplying, Houthi rebels down in Yemen and that to carry out attacks that could affect U.S. Warships, things like that. But we saw the short-term buyers returning here, and as long as that orange continues to dive, fairly decent setup from a bull standpoint, at least for the recovery. And the same thing happening on the Nasdaq, a little bit stronger from its perspective overall. So what's the net effect of this kind of situation? Well, from a treasury standpoint, obviously you're going to have a bit of a softening of rates because people are going to dive into the dollar. Uh, Overall, this wall of fear that you create, people think of it as negative, and it was in the short term, but it's actually quite bullish because within that fear, usually you get that climbing of that wall where people are scared, but you don't have a choice where you're going to move your money to, which could be bullish for your crypto, but only to a modest degree. The reality is that the Russians know that a new administration is coming, and this is part of that. Escalation to de-escalate that Trump talked about, but what they're likely to play it off in is going after third parties and or making oil situations difficult. So is a net boon for oil? Absolutely. That's going to continue to rise. What it is a negative for is all the European partners because they're the ones who are likely going to suffer the consequences. Most likely a little sabotage. We already saw the, hardline fiber optic in Finland and that, and there's plenty of negative and vulnerable situations within the EU broadly and all their partners because that's what the Russian doctrine that was released before this attack happened stated that they would go after all the partners associated with it. So they don't necessarily have to go after the U.S. directly, though it does bring things a lot closer to an undesirable overall outcome. But as long as nothing material develops, nothing material develops from that situation, you're going to have a situation where the market just has to trade accordingly. And so we'll keep an eye on that one and follow it as it goes. Turning to gold, it's going to be also a bonus for there, particularly if there's any additional, fear factor built into it. Obviously, you can see it's turned around from its negative readings and presenting a little bit of a positive. Of course, right now, a little bit soft because the market is slightly up. But again, we won't know until things start to develop. But as you can see from a Bitcoin standpoint, the push towards 100 is pretty much built into the setup as it is this particular stage. Pretty hard to stop at that particular point. It's interesting, though, that ETH far lagging behind it. And, this has just become a popularity situation versus also a store where you can just transfer in and out fairly easily. From a intraday situation, you can see this is where the attack readings came through, and everybody responded to that with a hyper negative. But that created great opportunity for bulls to drive things, and that just forced short covering, which is ideal for pushing things up further. And here, even in the post market, European session fairly benign, no immediate reaction from the Russians at this particular stage, and that. So again, that's where that fear factor continues to give way to added price improvement. And you're in a generally bullish situation. Of course, that doesn't get into the secondary issues of the continuing resolution for the budget that has to be done before, December 20th and the wrangling that's going on with that. And of course, all the other political issues. that certainly will impact winners and losers, particularly when it comes to defense. Is there going to be a short-term bonus for defense people, or is that going to be something that's blocked? And so this is where you're going to have that back and forth play. You just have to be dynamic with it. But overall, our reading is pretty clear. We're able to see where things are headed at any given moment. So we'll just continue to follow the readings. As always, anything relevant, open to the Skype chat. Have a good one. Trade well.